And welcome to the long-awaited return of Habs Unfiltered. I am your host, Blain, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Trege Wilson and the ever-handsome Matt Smith.
Good afternoon.
I didn't say anything. Matt's been gone for so long. I just wanted Matt to have the floor. I didn't want to take away his thunder.
It has been a while.
I missed you guys.
Missed you guys too.
Habs Unfiltered's been gone. We've actually been getting people asking, where is Habs Unfiltered? I just want to say before we start, thanks everyone for noticing that we were gone. It makes us realize that, hey, people actually do look forward to our show. You should really get mental help and therapy. But thank you for making us feel like we're wanted.
We're not used to that.
No, we're not.
Yeah, because it was my turn to deploy this time.
And Matt and I are really lazy, so.
Now I'm only home for a short period. I got a little holiday and I got to go back until the end of October. But I'm sure you guys are going to pick up the pace on the shows now that you're all set up. And
well, when only one person knows how to produce the show and put it out, and the other two don't really know, and then they're like, I don't know what to do here. It kind of slows things down. But we'll put more of an effort to learn how to put the show together. And I'm sure Matt and I could have a great show without you dragging us down. So, I mean, it should be wonderful.
True. 100% true. So I also want to thank everybody for checking in with us and asking for more. I agree. You guys really should get some help. But here we are back, and we are going to talk about we're going to have a draft episode coming up after this episode, but this one we're going to talk about the rumors that are flying around. We're going to talk about the expectations for the team leading into the draft, some off-season talk. So why don't we just get started right off the top and talk a little bit about what we each expect from Kent Hughes leading into the draft at the end of this week. What about you, Matt?
I think he's just going to be aggressive. I really do. I think he's going to go out there and he's going to just have the phone in his hand for the majority of the time leading up to the draft. He knows that he's got the assets, and he's in a position right now that I'm not going to say that he has to move those assets, but the longer that he holds on to them and the more that he brings in, it's pushing other guys out. Like we've seen it with Mayu making his debut last year, with Hudson making his debut last year, and like even though both of those guys I can't say that are locks to make the team out of camp, and some people are going to give me some backlash for saying that, but when you look at waiver eligibility and depending on who they bring in, etc., those are the guys that are the easiest to go down, Mr. Wade, they can pass through. And that's the only reason I'm saying that. I think Hudson makes the team, but we'll leave it at that. But I think that 26 pick, I think that's going to be the one that's going to be the most in play. And I think we're going to see a defenseman like a Harris, maybe a Struble, maybe a Barron, somebody like that moving out with that pick and trying to either move up in the draft or a package going together to bring in some help, kind of like what they did with Kirby Doc or with Newhook with the 2 draft picks. That's what I believe is going to happen. I think that's going to be the first move that's going to be made. But now that the Florida Panthers won the Cup, I think that everything's going to be everyone's going to be open for business now, because it's hockey on the ice right now is over. So I think everyone's going to start picking up their phones and making those phone calls, and I think that's going to be the main one. And if it can happen prior to the draft, I think that'd be good for the team, and I think that'd be good for the management group to be able to say, okay, this is what we're working with. And this is what we need. And depending on what the deal is made and who they bring out, it might even change who they're going to pick at number 5. But I don't believe that play is in pick, or that pick is in play.
No, I agree. I don't think it's going to be in play. And I honestly believe that I agree. So I agree with you that the 26th pick is in play. And I do think that they're looking to add scoring. Now, if they can't trade that with some other asset, like a defenseman, like you mentioned, to bring in a goal scorer or bring in a point producer, a true top six or someone who will be, I think they're going to use that to move up into the top 10.
I think so too. I think so too. I think if they can't bring in the guy that they want, and I'm sure that they have a few on their list, and we know that Ken Hughes, he doesn't really just kind of like bend over and say like, okay, this is what you're gonna, he doesn't break for the deal. He
No.
doesn't just settle. If the deal isn't right, he walks away from it. We've seen that time and time again. So I truly believe that he's he set his prices. I'm sure he's got his untouchables. Um, but you got to look at it in a hockey standpoint as well, and where this team is going, and the development of the players, etc. Um, a lot of people on social media are saying you get a rush to trade Matheson, or you get a rush to trade Savard, you get a rush to trade this guy or this guy, and it's like, okay, just kind of pump the brakes a little bit. You can't just get rid of all your veteran players, because you can't just use all rookies and then expect the team to do anything. There needs to be
Well,
there needs to be some sort of growth. And I see with the players that they're rumored to be interested in, like a Martin Necas, etc. Um, that's a player that you bring in, and you want to take a next step to get a little bit better. You don't want to say, okay, well, we brought in Martin Necas, but we got rid of our top scoring defenseman to do it, and we got rid of this guy to do it, and we got rid of this guy to do it, and you create other holes in your game.
see, I I agree with you too, Matt. I think they're going to try to push to get rid of that 26 overall pick, along with one or two of their defensemen. I think they do realize they have way too many, especially on the left side. So I wouldn't be shocked if Struble and or Harris are both trade, maybe not in the same deal, but in separate deals. We do know that Jack Eye is not, I wouldn't say he's untouchable, but he's going to only go for the exact price that Hughes wants. So we've learned with Hughes in the last 3 years, doesn't really back down from what he wants. He sets a price for all his players, and he doesn't really go far away from getting what he wants. Lehkonen, he wanted a first round pick. He didn't get the pick, but he got the first round player, Justin Barron. I'm not going to say that worked out or didn't work out. I think Justin Barron's still a project. But I think the same with a guy like Arbor Jackeye. Like a lot of people say, oh, get rid of Jackeye. He's nothing more than a third pairing thug. Yeah, but he's a third pairing thug that can step up into the second or first pairing when need be. And you have a guaranteed, skilled third pairing defenseman. Like everyone seems to stop after the second pair and go, who cares over the third pair? Well, that third pair does play 12, can play up to 12 minutes a night. So you should care about it. Jackeye averages 14 to 15 minutes a night. When it comes to guys like Necas, Zegras, and I guess McGroarty, I guess is the new guy that's on the radar.
Yeah,
He's
we'll
the
get into
guy.
that in a bit.
Now, I don't think the Habs are in on Zegras at all. I don't think there's any traction there. I think it's more just Twitter. This is who we want, so we're going to make up narratives that they're in on it. I do hear from reliable sources that they are still in on Necas. I don't mind getting either one of those players, but I'm not giving up the whole farm to get them. My issue
I'm
with
pretty
those players
sure.
is I don't see them moving the needle like the way they should move the needle, personally.
Well, the whole idea is to add scoring to your top six, and both would do that. Now, I have no doubt that Hughes is called about Zegras and asked, "Hey, what are you looking for?"
No doubt.
But
I just
I'm
don't.
sure that
I just don't think he wants the return. If
no, and
Gooley's the
that's the thing.
return, he's not. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. Right
Absolutely not. That's the
now
thing.
with
Like he's asking
with
what the cost would be, and it's more than what he wants to pay.
now with Necas, personally, I don't think he moves the needle. He had one season above 50. He averages 55 points a game. New Hook averaged 50 points a season this year in an injured riddled season. At one point, Jonathan Drouin averaged 50 points a season every season he played with the Montreal Canadiens. So my argument about Necas is you hated Drouin because he didn't score the way you wanted him to. Necas isn't much more of a scorer than Drouin.
Well, that's more about expectations. Like you bring a guy like him in, people are talking about him as a center. He's not going to be a center.
No.
He's a winger. And he will bring points, 50, 60 points in that area, which is what the Canadiens do need. But it comes down to how much are they going to spend to get him out of that fucking hellhole in Carolina.
And that's just it. And the point is people are saying, oh, we got to get rid of this guy and this guy and this guy and get these players. And I'm like, I'm not giving up the farm for a 50 to 60 point player.
Yeah, there was a crazy trade that came out the other day, and I almost threw my phone when I read it.
There's
no,
KK
that wasn't the one.
It
was something ridiculous, but it was in the lines. It was a three-way trade. It was a three-way trade with Winnipeg, and it was like Montreal was getting rid of like Harris Struble, their first, which was 26th overall, plus something else, and Owen Beck. And the only thing that they were bringing back was Necas, and then Ehlers was going to Carolina with a draft pick or something, and all the rest of those assets were going to Winnipeg. And like Montreal's getting rid of like 5 or 6 pieces, and the other teams were the only thing that was involved was Ehlers and Necas. And
was that Tom Dundon's burner account?
Like, what is going on with
this? I just like I'm not against getting Necas or Zegras. I'm just not paying an absorbent amount of assets to get a player that's not the superstar player that we need. We need a bona fide, almost point per game player, and those two guys are not.
Right.
And here's the thing: you got a top 5 pick in your pocket, and you're going to be looking at something along those lines with that pick, but you still need more. So if you're able to get some offense out of that top 5 pick, which we're going to talk about in the next show.
Yep.
But you got that, and you bring in a proven top 6 player, someone who can play on, guaranteed second line, who can step up on a first line, play on the power play, give you some points. That is what the Canadiens need to add. But again, for what? What are you giving up?
And I see what you're saying, Blaine, but if you're getting that top 6 player and you're top 5 pick, why do you need to go out and get that top 6 player from somewhere else when you already have Newhook, Caulfield, Slafkovsky, Suzuki, Doc? There's only one more position on the top 6, and now you have 2 players to fit that top 6. You see what I'm saying? Like, why are you?
I get it.
Now, unless I don't mind giving up a Gooley or a Reinbacher or a Doc or someone like that, if I'm getting that
game breaking player. Yeah.
That game breaking player. Yeah. I don't mind giving up a 2 draft picks and a Gooley and a whatever if I'm getting that player. What I do mind is giving that all up to get a player who's just a top 6 player. Right. You know what I'm saying? That's what I have.
No, I get that. And that makes sense as well. But my thinking behind my point was there's a lot of young players who may or may not be ready to just step into that top role. So you add some scoring depth. So you have a team that can score. This is a team that has a hard time defending right now too. So this coming season, that top 5 pick is not going to be playing. More than likely going to return to wherever they're drafted from. And this season, they want to really take a step forward. So adding that and then looking forward to a couple years down the road when they're really competing, then you have a little bit more scoring depth. Now, I don't believe Necas is ever going to be a Montreal Canadien because Tom Dundon is a whiny bitch.
I'd say you heard it here first, but we've heard that before.
He holds a grudge for a billionaire businessman whose supposed job is to get a Stanley Cup in Carolina. he really isn't doing what he needs to do to allow his management team to do that. Like
No,
he's minimizing it or
he's allowing
blocking some of
signing
it.
bonuses now, so that's new. He's allowing signing
Well, yeah.
bonuses now.
Now that they're selling tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying, Blaine, and I'm not against that. I guess I'm just looking at the short term, and I'm like, I don't see where I'm not giving up all this. I think it comes down to,
No.
and we all agree on this, it all depends on what's going the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like,
think we're going to see a more aggressive Ken Hughes next season, because that's when they're going to have so much more money to play with. Is you're going to have, and we obviously, a lot of these guys are on their last year of their contract, so they could be moved out at the deadline for whatever, and they can use their cap space to keep some of that that money. But guys like Dvorak, Armia, Jake Evans, these are all expiring contracts. Same as a guy like David Savard. Like, they're all expiring at the end of the season. So that's going to be a bunch of money to play with at 4.45, 3.4, 3.5, etc. You start adding that up, you bring in some decent players, then you also you have to re-sign Gooley, and you're going to have to re-sign Slavkovsky.
Yeah. And with the raise in the cap this year and probably again next year, we're looking at a cap of what, about 92 million?
Yeah. Be like,
plus,
below 90s.
plus you got Carey Price in his final year of his contract next year, so don't be
Right.
shocked if that's gone. If not this off season, it's gone, because there's 5 teams right now that are below the cap floor with the new salary cap raise. So 10.5 million on a team that puts you over the cap floor with room to play with. So don't be shocked if Carey Price is a Utah fucking whatever their name's
Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah, Utah Hockey Club player.
Utah Yeehaws.
But
Storm and Mormons.
Utah sister cousins. So, or sister wives, or whatever the hell you want to call them. But that's another thing you got to take, because I don't think a lot of people think the long-term injury reserve is a blessing in disguise, but it's really not. It's really hard to work with, and you really have a lot of restrictions with it. And basically, Montreal's been using it just for their bonuses and their to be able to move players from the AHL to the NHL. And if you can have that 10.5 million in your pocket, it's a lot better than having it tied to a player and then having to go through all that bullshit of the LTIR. So don't be shocked if Carey Price is not a Montreal Canadien within the next 2 seasons.
Which makes sense, because they're getting ready to make that push to spend some money on bringing in those missing pieces. So they're doing the draft and develop. They've taken a couple of steps. This year, I think, is going to be the last year that fans are going to be, in air quotes, patient with the club of not making the playoffs, because they are going to expect more. So a team that's actually in a playoff race, but not necessarily in it. So they're going to have to start spending money on not just bringing in missing pieces, but like you mentioned, Slavkovsky, all the RFAs that are going to be coming up in the next few years. They want to keep these young players. So it would be helpful that way. Which kind of brings me to another rumor, another young player, Rutger McGroarty. So this is a player that we had all talked about in February on this show as a possible return for Monahan, because he kind of fits every check in the box that Hughes tends to enjoy, and not just him, but St. Louis. He's big, he's strong, he likes to go to the net, he's skilled with the puck, he's got a good shot, he can play with pace. He may not be the fastest skater, but he gets to where he needs to go, and he plays in the dirty areas. And like I said, he plays with pace. You don't need to be the fastest skater if you already know what you're going to do when you have the puck.
Winnipeg doesn't have a first-round pick either, so it wouldn't shock me to have Montreal just trade that pick back, maybe throw in a Harris or a Struble or a defenseman. He's going to be the cheapest of all the rumored people that could go to Montreal. He's going to be cheaper than Necas and Zegras. And Winnipeg's in a tight spot because he's one of those NCAA players that's saying, I'm not playing with you. And I'm not going to sign with you if I'm not going to play where I want to play. That's a red flag to me because
Yeah,
it just shows he's kind of there for him and not there for but
they kind of all
until
are
they
though.
until they change the rules of the NCAA, there's really nothing you can do about it. An NCAA player can basically dictate where he's going to go in the NHL, whereas a European or CHL player can't. And I mean, I'll take him. I like his skill. I like what he brings. I like everything about him. He's a good young kid. He's going to work well. I just believe if he goes to Montreal, he's going to want to be a Montreal Canadian to start the season. And if there's no room for him, where does that go?
Well, there is. That's the thing. The
Oh,
Canadians
well,
do
yeah,
have room.
yeah,
And
and
there's no pressure to make the playoffs like there is in Winnipeg. Winnipeg was trying to take a step this year because they want to win right now, whereas the Canadians are taking a step forward from a rebuild, which provides him a little bit of leeway. He can play on a team, uh, make mistakes, learn. Uh, he gets decent ice time, and he won't be shuttled back and forth between the AHL, which I think is the reason why he doesn't want to be in Winnipeg. He sees what they're doing and what they've done with the younger guys. And while it's a good development model to a point, there's no steady line, steady progression, because they're back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
it's
He
like
just
Cole
wants to play.
Perfetti when Cole Perfetti went through that his first season.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So Montreal, in the meantime, has a top six position available to him. There's no pressure to make the playoffs. There'll be a pressure to produce and play well, but that's not something that would really hurt a player at his age coming into the league.
I mean, out of all those players, he's the guy I'd want Montreal to go after. If they're going to spend anything on someone, I'd rather it be him. And boom or bust. If he's good, great. If he's not,
Well, you
oh
gave up a
well.
26th overall pick. I mean, look
Yeah.
at the last time they had a 26th. I think it was Sherbak. They used the 26th on McCarron. Like, if you end up with an NHL player out of that trade, awesome. If you don't, well, I mean, it's a crapshoot anyway at 26.
Well,
Yeah.
all
And we'll,
those
we'll get it.
there's no four players that they picked around that. It was they took remember they took McCarron around that, but
Yep.
they traded up for him. Pretty sure. No, was it
No, it
McCarron
was
or
Tenorti
Tenori?
they
It
traded
was
up for.
Tenori.
Yeah.
But yeah, McCarron, Sherback, Juleson, and Paling were all right around the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can trade for a player that's shown some promise like McGroarty, who's clearly learned everything he needs to learn from the NCAA game, um, sure, why the fuck not?
Philip Massara was a 26th pick.
True, and he hasn't made the leap yet, but he will this year. He's going to play in the AHL. No one's pretending like he's going to make the jump to the NHL this year. Uh, he's got the potential to be a top six player, possibly. My guess is top nine, but nonetheless,
Well, with all the changes that have come out of Laval, including now getting have to bring in another head coach.
yeah,
But like Mitchell Stevens is gone, Elias Anderson's gone, etc.
Oh,
So
there's
it's
all
gonna
kinds of
leave
veterans.
it's gonna leave a
Yeah.
lot of holes in the lineup. So guys like Mesher, guys like Beck, etc. They're gonna be able to jump in, and they're gonna have to play with a bigger role, depending on
yeah,
obviously who they
yeah.
bring in during the off season.
Don't be shocked if a guy like Beck makes the Canadians.
Well, he
Well,
was one of the
I
last
wouldn't
guys
be.
last year.
Yeah, and the year before.
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if he makes it. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he goes to the AHL. I think in a development standpoint, I think that's a good way to go, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's especially if someone like Dvorak is moved in the off season, or I mean Evans is in his last season, Dvorak's in his last season. Um, you know, God knows what if Kirby Doc's going to play 82 games or 37 minutes. We don't know how much he's going to play. So, um, yeah, But a
Well, with
history
that,
of 26 pick, just to go out there, we had Sherbak,
yeah,
Juleson, and Massar were all 26 picks.
there you go.
And Montreal's
Um,
illustrious history.
so with Beck, I think the ideal scenario for him, because he's talking about um, wanting to prove his offensive game has improved, that he's better off to try that in the AHL. So he goes that he plays in the AHL, he plays his style, he works on his offensive game a little bit. Then Dvorak gets traded at the end of the season. You bring in Beck. That's a win-win.
Well, that's just it. Like, so the trade deadline, if Montreal's not in a playoff spot, which I think they'll be close, but not there. I think they'll still be sellers at the deadline, especially with all their expiring contracts that are going to be happening with Savard and Dvorak and Evans. So don't be
Yeah.
shocked if they move, you know, all three of those players. And of course, Beck's going to have to go. Beck's the guy that's going to have to fill in as the 3C, and I think that's a perfect spot for him in Montreal.
Yeah. And this brings me to one last rumored player, which I honestly don't believe is going to happen, but I want to get Matt's take on this one. Patrick Laine. There was talk about him being a target for the Canadiens because Montreal is willing to pay big money for short term, and well, he definitely fits that.
He is a proven goal scorer. He's a proven point producer. He's got the size you're looking for on your wing. He's like 6'4", 6'5". It's the injuries and that part of his game that kind of scare me off the most. He was in the players assistance program, and for him to say like, "Hey, I need some help," that's something. Everything that I've read into it, he's ready to get out of the. He's ready to get out of the program, and Don Waddell and his team are looking to make the move. Um, I just don't know if going right back into the spotlight of a Canadian market, especially the Canadiens, would be the right move for him because that expectation would be there. But I wouldn't close the door on it depending on what the return is. Because like he is making I think 8.7 mil or something like that for this season and next or something like that. So it's going to depend on what Columbus would be willing to, if they were at all. Obviously, if you're going to eat some of the contract, then the price is going to go up on what you're going to give. But if it's a straight up more or less hockey trade, then I could see it as a potential. I'm sure a call will be made, but it's going to really depend on what the ask is, and kind of the player's mindset of wanting to play in a big market like that.
Well, who's talking here? Oh,
You.
I don't think Laine has a snowball's chance in hell of coming to Montreal. I don't think it's a good fit for him. I actually defend him. I think he and when he plays, he's almost a point per game producer in the last 3 years. But like Matt alluded to, a lot of his issues have been since the death of his father. I think he had a hard time dealing with that, and I think he's going to be exactly what everyone thinks he's going to be. I think I mean, he's going to be probably a 30 to 40 goal scorer for the rest of his career on average. And I just don't see at this point. Yes, I know they want some short-term help, but at 8.7 million for 2 years, I could see if Montreal was trying to make that step to contend. Like if they were already a playoff team and they just wanted that added depth to whatever to try to push them forward. But as of right now, I don't think it's necessary to get Laine on the team. If I were to go that route, I'd be more Necas or Zegras. They're younger and longer, Zegras, and then they have longer contracts. They're going to be there once you make that push. For me, if there's 1 year left on Laine's contract, I'd look at it as a Monahan type deal. Yep, we'll bring him in, see what he does, and hope we can flip him for a good draft pick. at the trade deadline. But I mean, again, you're not doing your due diligence if you're not making a call about it. Like, you always want to improve the team. And Ken Hughes says in every interview he does, I am not going to make a move that's not going to improve this team. But I don't see, to me, the Laine rumors, the one way over here that if it happens, that's the one I'm going to be most shocked about. Whereas the other three, I don't think they're going to have. I don't think any of the names we mentioned are actually going to become Montreal Canadiens. I just don't. McGroarty is going to be the closest, I think, or Necas has the most smoke, so I'll throw his name in there because that has a lot of smoke around it. But I just don't see. Hughes giving up what the other teams want for it. And again, I agree with you. I think any deal with the Canadiens is going to have to go through Whiny McWhiny Pants, and he's going to be like, "No, they made me mad a few years ago, even though it's totally a whole different management team and everything. So I want nothing to do with them. They're big dum-dums, and I hate them.
You make me sad.
I'm going to go buy a tractor."
All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything for this episode. We're going to have a draft preview episode coming out as well very soon. So keep an eye on that. Remember, Habs Unfiltered is an affiliated show. We are independent, but we do affiliate ourselves with a couple of different sites. So the Hockey Writers, who are apparently the top Montreal Canadiens source, according to Habs aggregate, and Prior Media. So keep an eye out for us all over there. We're also on iHeartRadio, anywhere else you can get get podcasts. So keep an eye out for the show there. Thank you guys for sticking with us, being patient with us because the show hasn't been out for a bit. But again, thank you very much for listening. And remember, if you're talking about it, so are we.